And please kindly watch some video from Mentari Group and enjoy the video.
Bersama Mentari membangun pendidikan Indonesia dan majukan bangsa. Mentari kualitas SDM yang terpercaya dengan nilai dan budaya. Cakap, cerdas, cepat dan alive, berani mau sanggup dan melayani dengan setulus hati. Bersama kita bisa, bersama kita bisa. Bersama Mentari membangun pendidikan Indonesia dan majukan bangsa. Mentari kualitas SDM yang terpercaya dengan nilai dan budaya. Cerdas, cepat dan alive, berani mau sanggup dan melayani dengan setulus hati. Bersama kita bisa, bersama kita bisa, bersama Mentari.
Betapa pentingnya guru. Guru adalah pengaruh utama untuk generasi muda. Guru mampu mengubah generasi muda Indonesia. Maukah kamu mengambil peran itu? Mengambil peran penting membangun generasi muda, generasi bangsa. Negara memanggilmu. Jawab panggilan itu.
Dear educators, in case you are willing to watch the video again that has been shown just now, you can access the video on our YouTube. So please check right away Mentari Group channel. Now we are going to play Mentari Group anthem or Mars Mentari that have been we sing every day and at all Mentari Group events. As part of our passion to live the vision, mission, and culture of Mentari Group in each of our work, namely build education to develop the nation. Hopefully by this anthem you can understand more about Mentari Group. Let's listen together.
Insan Mentari, hai ini waktumu mengabdi bangsa lewat pendidikan. Berangkat dari visi misi luhur, kami datang untuk membangun negeri, berani bermimpi dan terus berkreasi, mau dan sanggup menjadi yang terbaik, cakap cepat cerdas salah, itu adalah kami, bergerak terbaik, itulah nafas kami, untuk Indonesia kami berkarya, bangun pendidikan, majukan bangsa.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, educators. Welcome to Professional Development Training for IGCSE Math and Science, presented by Mentari Group and SG Education. Hopefully, all of you in good condition and healthy condition and ready to join our event. This program is created to be a platform for educators across Indonesia to share and grow together. Today's agendas will cover the topic, Flip Your IGCSE Classroom for Better IGCSE Exam Result. For 1.5 hours ahead, my name is Bernard and I will lead this agenda. Before we start our agenda, let me inform you of some regulation for our event. First, this session will start at 2 p.m. Make sure you have a stable internet connection. Next, during the session, participant microphone will be muted. Next, we will have Q&A in the end of the session. If you have any question, please type it on the chat box, or when it comes to the Q&A session, you can deliver your question directly to the trainer by using the raise hand feature. And this is how you activate the raise hand feature. If you use a laptop or computer, you can click on participant. Then there will be a raise hand icon. But if you use the updated version, the raise hand feature will be in the reaction. Or if you use a cell phone, you can click on the three dots feature. In the Q&A session, I will choose some lucky people to deliver the question to our trainer. That's all for today's regulation. Educators, we are proud to announce that we are having 265 participants from 76 schools and from 31 cities in Indonesia registered in this Zoom meeting room. Wow, that's a wonderful, and we are really grateful to have you all here. Also, for your information, Mentari Group has organized both offline and online training in various cities in Indonesia. The training that we conducted in 2020 until February 2021 was attended by more than 32,000 participants from more than 10,000 schools and institutions in various cities in Indonesia. We thank you for your participation in this Mentari Group event. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Santo Sinaga, as head of International School of Mentari Group, to deliver his welcome address. Please welcome Mr. Santo Sinaga.
Thank you, Bernard. Let me share my screen first. Can you see my slide, Bernard?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, teachers, educators, curriculum coordinators, and school leaders. Welcome to our webinar we organized today with the support from our new partner, AZ Education, based in United Kingdom. As mentioned by the MC, our session today registers 265 participants. It's really great to have you all here, and we thank you all for spending your time with us today. We hope that the session today will give you some insights on strategies and ideas to support your IGCSE teaching, especially for maths and science subjects. It's almost a year. We all are forced to shift from face-to-face classroom to a virtual teaching and learning. In fact, across the world, the pandemic has disrupted education systems, leading to widespread closures of schools, universities, and colleges, and an increase in distance and online learning, affecting an estimated 60% of the world's student population. However, there's a saying, in all the threats, there are also opportunities. Talking about the virtual learning phenomena happening today due to COVID-19 pandemic, this is perhaps the best time for all of us to accelerate the use of technology to help us deliver quality education. Like it or not, we are now entering a new era of exploiting ICT in full gear to keep the world going while keeping our feet on the ground. It's also interesting to learn that in a rapid survey done by the Indonesian Minister of Education, one of the challenges faced by the teachers in doing the online teaching is the difficulty in monitoring the progress of the students, and therefore it's worth exploring how we can use the technology to help us better in tracking the learners' progress during their home-based learning. In short, we need tools, strategies, and formula to ensure the online learning remain well monitored, as well as effective and engaging for our learners. so we can successfully embrace more blended learning outside traditional classroom setting. Talking about blended learning, I'm sure that you all agree with the power and benefits of blended learning, that we then continue its implementation even after the students will return to their face-to-face classroom. The appropriate use of digital solution will not only provide an opportunity for the learners to extend learning outside of classroom walls, but indeed it supports a student-centric approach in such a way that learning modules can be further personalized and more adaptable to each individual. Students within one classroom can move at different paces, and teachers can see more easily which students either express more interest in a particular area or show the need for extra attention in a particular subject. In short, blended learning has the potential to help academic performance, promote learners' motivation, self-regulation, and self-efficiency, allowing students to reduce the distance between their current performance and desired performance. This is even more critical to achieve when we talk about helping to prepare our learners to anticipate the high-stake tests such as IGCSE exams. Today, as I mentioned earlier, we'll try to see and discuss how we can shift from a traditional classroom to a new virtual and borderless one, along with some ideas and strategies to support our learners with an effective and engaging online learning. The focus for today's session will be on using digital support and technology to support IGCSE exams preparation, mainly for IGCSE maths and science, which is physics, chemistry, and biology. As far as IGCSE exam preparation is concerned, high levels of formative assessment support allow focused students to work on their own and catch up without being tied to availability teaching hours. Ladies and gentlemen, today's session is a series of works, dedication, and commitment in accordance with Mentari Group's vision and mission to build education together with you as teachers, educators, who are the most critical element in bringing quality education in Indonesia. We are loyal to the vision and mission that has never changed in the last 20 years. Since the day one Mentari Group was established, we aim to become an active contributor to help develop high caliber human capital in Indonesia through education, so our beloved Indonesia can stand up par with other leading nations in the world. We also like to thank AZ Education and also to our speaker for today's session, Mr. Peter Jordan. Thank you, Mr. Peter, for your willingness to share with educators here today. Before I end my session, allow me to play a short video about Mentari Group and our journey in building education together with Indonesian educators over the past 20 years. Please enjoy the video. Ladies and gentlemen, let me to end my opening remarks by sharing the following nice quotation for our personal reflection. Technology will not replace great teachers, but technology in the hand of great teachers can be transformational. Let us together build education and develop the nation. Majulah Indonesiaku. Thank you and have a great session. Now back to you, Bernard.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Santo, for your insightful opening remark and for sharing Mentari Group journey. All right, without any further ado, let's start our session by watching our trainer video profile. Educators, please welcome Mr. Peter Jordan.
Good morning and welcome to Easy Education. I say good morning, it's obviously good afternoon in Indonesia. Before we get going, I would very much echo the words of Mr. Santo at the start. Technology is very much an enabler for education, and that is our passion. And that really we don't see technology taking over from teachers at all. And I think hopefully what we'll be able to show you today is some great examples of how teaching teams have got hold of the technology, especially during the pandemic period, which has provided added impetus to what we do, so that more and more schools are really discovering the power of technology and how it can be used to change the learning experience for young people and indeed the learning outcomes as well. And we'll look at a few of those things. So today we're going to start off looking at the pandemic challenges that are facing education. So we're going to look at some of the recent teaching problems, have a think about some of the solutions to that, and then we're going to start looking into how it's really all about creating more independent learning, monitoring that independent learning so you create data. And once you start that happening, it's going to be possible to watch your classes flip over. So the traditional model of everything being very teacher-centered will change a bit because there won't be so much pressure on to deliver content and so on and so forth. And lessons will change much more into active affairs where the students are doing work and the teacher is intervening to help them. And so that's what we really mean by a flipped lesson. And so in these types of classes, work will take place before a lesson. Young people come into a lesson more confident and informed so that the teaching skills can be leveraged by knowledge of what they understand and what they've been doing. Once we've done that, and throughout this, we're going to look at some examples which are quite static to begin with, because we've tried to capture the experiences of schools, which we can't really do in a demo because of data privacy concerns and so on. But what we'll do is we'll move on to look at a system demo where we'll take you through exactly how it works from a student and from a teacher's perspective. And then at the end, we'll look at some next steps in terms of the relationship and how to start taking your first steps to exploring what we do. So first off, what I would say is when we get into the demo, we are going to be, if we just come back there, we are going to be looking at the maths course, and within the maths course, a lot of the questions will have this extra question support option available. And so if you can all use your mobile phones now to prepare for that in advance a bit by downloading from either Google Play or the App Store, the Zappar app, Z-A-P-P-A-R. And once you've done that and you've installed it, what you'll be able to see is once we get to this, I'll stop on a few screens so that you can aim at the code on the screen that you see. And effectively what you'll have to do is just to wait for the unlock sound and message. And then what happens is you pull back the phone and adjust the field of view to fill the viewer up with the complete image to activate the augmented reality experience that students can engage with through this option, which usually generates quite a bit of excitement. So definitely something worth thinking about. And if you're using our courses, the app is free, so it's really an added extra. So if we look at some of the recent problems in education, it's all been about the virus and the pandemic, and it's been global in terms of the impact in terms of education. And I think some of our reflections on this would be that the ages-old teaching model is centered on the teacher and a paper-based and manual approach. And that really teachers as well have been under pressure from increased student numbers and raised expectations. And that there hasn't been enough focus on automation to solve these issues, which means that the closure of schools and the separation of students has had a massive effect on the actual system that is pretty much used all around the globe. And this is why there's some sort of quite intensive thinking going into this now, because although we're beginning to get through this particular pandemic, it is raising the questions in educational policymakers and leaders in terms of the system has to be better next time round so that we can seamlessly deal with something like this rather than everything coming to a halt. And it's about having more resilient teaching delivery with more effective automation. And it is the automated enablement of teachers which is really at the heart of the solution to this, at least in terms of how we have been thinking about it. And if we just take a quick look at some of the responses to this, I think it's fair to say that Google and Microsoft have been everywhere in the education world. However, I think there have been some big problems with this. I certainly have within the UK. And that is because it's effectively a video conferencing solution in terms of this. However, because we're dealing with larger groups and there's issues in making large discussions interactive, as indeed today, it'd be very difficult to have a conversation with everybody who's on this call. There are no audible or visuals cues coming back, which means that the whole situation is seriously compromised. So it's a bit like at the moment, I don't know what the reaction is out in Indonesia. And I'm talking away here on the south coast of England. But really you then have to work really, really hard to make those classes work. And although there's some great tech tied up with Google and Microsoft, there's no ready-made interactive material. And that's the key thing with all of this, is that in essence, what that has meant is that teachers have had to rely heavily on the existing content that they use in physical classes. But the problem then is that the activity is invisible if you work too much with PDFs. And then the next problem with that is if you take the view that that's not working too well, where's the interactive content to change that game a bit? And so what all of this means is that, as always, the pressure comes down on the teachers. And to have any idea at all of whether any learning took place in lessons it's absolutely critical to mark and input information into systems, which puts pressure on teachers and who are desperately running around trying to make all of this work. So this is really, I think, just an analogy of what we're talking about here. All of a sudden, you can't see what's going on. You can't really hear what's going on. It really is very, very difficult working with young people in terms of these types of solutions. And we have a big saying that it's about turning the lights on in your classroom in terms of what you can achieve with effective use of technology that young people like to work with. And really, in order to do that, it's got to be technology, because let's face it, your solutions are you start marking the homework and inputting the outcomes and so on and so forth, or you log into your system and you look at the outcomes and you start looking at those, analyzing them to work out how you're going to intervene in your class and how you're going to use the knowledge that young people have generated. And the automation, if you can get it right, will achieve some incredible things. This is a selective school in the UK. They are just to the west of London in a place called Slough. It's near Heathrow Airport, if that means anything to anybody. They started with us in September 1919. And I took these numbers June last year. So it's when it was getting to the end of the school year. They've been through a bit of the pandemic. And you can see there that the actual level of activity that the system had hosted was absolutely huge. 342,000 questions had been hosted on behalf of the school. Students had been very busy. But if you break that down, and if we go to the bottom there, you can see there were 10 teachers, science teachers at this school. That meant the system was dealing with 34,000 questions per teacher. And from the students' perspective, they had engaged with the system on average 761 times per student in terms of questions alone. And that's what you can get when the technology starts working away. And it is quite incredible what can go on once a school gets organized, gets their students organized, the students get into a routine, and the work will really start to flow. Here's another example. So this is an international school in Qatar, which is part of the Sherborne Schools Group. They do EdXL, IGCSE Science. And they, again, were very, very active as well. So if you look here, this is looking at the month to 1st of March of this year. So we're talking 4 weeks. And the level of work was quite impressive in terms of what they achieved. So over that 4-week period, the system marked 152 assignments per teacher. There were lots of video interactions going on, and there were 1,729 question records logged per teacher. And that's the big deal with our approach, is that if, as is the case with most assignments, you just make a note of the summative outcome in your gradebook, or even indeed in a lot of the digital tools, it's all about the fact that we log those question records, which you just could not do over every piece of interactive work. And in just a month, we were logging over 1,700 records per teacher in just one school. And the actual power of the automation becomes really, really clear, where you can see that in just 4 weeks, there are over 50,000 server records generated by the activity of all of the students. So it makes a big difference having the automation behind you. This is another school in London, in England. They are quite a big school, so they got 600 students. Again, these guys are doing GCSE science in the UK. And you can see here, that was quite an incredible amount of work over a month, just 4 weeks. nearly 4,000 assessment attempts over that period. And the key thing at this school, and this is really the heart of formative assessment, it's about getting young people to do work and then using that information within teaching activities, and then allowing pupils also the opportunity to help themselves through the way in which the system is set up. And we've got quite a unique grade book which helps students to do that and provides them with huge amounts of support in terms of the explanations of the activities. So if I just move to one side, I mean, we're just talking about numbers there. It's easy to have big numbers in the digital world. What I'm showing here is pretty much, this is a piece of work from one of our schools down in the West Country, so in the southwest of England, a tourist resort. And this is a girls' grammar school, and it basically shows you a particular activity that a class was organized to do. And so where the teachers end up with this is the students have done all the hard work, and the system has helped out recording what they've done. And the first starting point is you'll get taken through to this link, which will show you what the students have been doing. So you can see on the right hand side, you can see the assessment outcomes, which, because we're just looking at one assessment, matches the outcomes in the average column first time round. You can see there's some data in terms of how much time the students spent on the system, and also to what extent they had engaged with the video material. So pretty much how a teacher would review this, and a lot of schools were doing this online, setting the students to do work independently, and then in the online classes they would go straight to this field. And then once into that, what they would do is, if you click on the actual assessment title there, it takes you through to a learning map, which takes it into a different world where you've got question by question analysis within this. So some of the good things here is you can look at the time spent on activity, which is quite important, and but not if you've haven't got access to that sort of data. And certainly that has been the tradition, is that the only way you can judge how hard students have worked is by the amount of work that they hand in. What we've got here is everybody in effect has done the same amount of work, but the time spent ranges enormously from 3 minutes to 44 minutes. 3 minutes gave a 64% outcome, 44 minutes, that student achieved 50%. So I think immediately this is telling you a lot more about the relative comfort levels students have got with the material. Not only just their outcome, but how quickly they're able to work through it. And what you will see once we get into the demo later on is each of the cells in the main part of the learning map there will give an image record, access to an image record of each question attempt. So there are actually 260 images within this, and these are the sorts of things that will pop up. And so in effect, you can see we've got an explanation, which is in the top window, with a video to play, which will give an explanation of that question. And it then shows you the student answer, and it will be marked. So if it's red, it's incorrect, green, it's right. And it will then show the correct answer at the bottom. But it allows you to really see the sorts of mistakes that are being made. And then if you go to the top, you can see underneath the question numbers, we give the class outcome on each question. And there are 10 teacher support pop-ups which come from those. It's a slightly different version of the student pop-up. So you can see we start off with the correct answer, so you can go straight through to that. We then do a bit of input analysis, which is a bit difficult to see there, but in that particular part of the pop-up, which is under input analysis there, we will show how many of the students got that part of the question right. And then indeed, you've got the opportunity to play an explanation as well, which changes quite a few things in terms of the stress of teaching. So what you then have is pretty much, once we get into that sort of stuff, you're into our world where it's very data driven, and we try to create a very engaging experience. You'll see some multi-input questions today. There's no teacher marking or keying, no paper records. We do explanation, feedback. It really is a different approach to what is going on. And our view would be, of course, the content and the activities have to be good enough to engage students, but it's the infrastructure which is going to make the difference for the teachers. And the whole point of it is to create more independent work and more formative assessment in terms of the monitoring of work. And before you know it, that's when your classes will start to change. Even if you don't consciously do that, you will start to think about doing things differently. And that's really, I would say, there isn't a precise definition of what flipped is, but you will start to think about doing different things purely because of the data that you've got. So if we just go back a bit now and look at how we think about these things, it's all about supporting independent learning. It's about getting young people to work on their own. And this is something that we use quite often. You know, if you think you are that youngster who struggles with maths, for example, or struggles with chemistry, you know, tricky subjects for some students, and you've just got a question wrong, which you've been asked to do, what are you going to do next? It doesn't really help to be told what the right answer should have been, because otherwise you'll just have to guess why you got it wrong and move on. But the alternative to that is to watch an explanation, clarify your thinking, and improve in the next question. That is really what we're really focused on. And I had experienced quite a bit of this when I was doing some teaching at a sixth form college, just in the early days before I started this up. And it became very clear. I did an exercise on a multi-choice past paper, and I went to the trouble of providing an explanation of why the right answer was the right answer, but more importantly, why the incorrect answers were wrong. And there was a really positive student response to this. And I started looking around in terms of this, and we started to read quite a bit of research. And I think this is probably the most important of the researches we've seen for us. And it is also, it's very widely used out in the field. And it was basically where they did some research to test just how much it actually helps students if they are given an explanation after a question. So basically they had a computer-based exercise, 3 groups of students, I think they're all 18-year-olds at Duke University, doing a physiology exercise. And there were 3 groups. So they were split into groups, didn't get any feedback at all. Those who were told what the correct answer should have been after the question was answered. And then there were those who were given an explanation. And what they then did was they brought them all back in 2 days later to go through the same exercise again, but to engage with a lot of new questions that had been nuanced, so slightly different questions. And these were the outcomes that they saw. There's a lot of stuff in that particular research paper, but in effect, what they found was it didn't really matter if you were given the correct answer or not in terms of going on to look at different questions. But if you've been previously given an explanation, there were learning benefits from that that transferred out into these new questions. And you can see there's quite a big difference in terms of the outcome that was achieved, 15 percentage points more next time round. And that is what really sort of inspires us. I mean, really, it's quite intuitive. I mean, that's teaching, isn't it? You sort of get students to try it themselves. If they fall, you provide them some feedback to help them, and then they'll get better on the next question. I mean, you know, it's teaching. But it really hasn't been around too much in terms of the whole world of education, because we spent a huge amount of money and time, I think more than anything, creating these types of explanations. And we have 16,000 videos that are coded into our courses, many of those used in different contexts as well within the platform. So huge amounts of work to do that. And so really this is how we try to support things. So what we've got here is a bit of it, an algebra. We're just talking about expanding brackets. And so the way in which we would work this is early questions. We would do some scaffolding to help demonstrate the right technique for doing this. Once the student has engaged with that, we would highlight any errors that have been made. We will then look, if you're moving across the slide there, you can see we then highlight what the correct answer should have been, but we provide a worked answer explanation which goes through that step by step. And really, what chance have you got without that sort of support, unless you're a talented mathematician, physicist or chemist? It's going to be quite tough. And we would say this is going to help those students who want to do better to break through their glass ceilings in maths. And so this, just to show how it works, this was a trigonometry question. So we've got on that slide, we've got basically the transitions within the content that we use in the explanation. So there's 6 dimensions to that, very pragmatic, step by step. And all I've put in there is the commentary that would go on within that, which really gives young people the assurance of this is how you do it. And we do that on every single question. So if we went to this trigonometry assessment, there might be 10 questions within that. We would have 10 different videos backing up, one for each question. Further applications of this, I mentioned about grade books earlier on. This is showing the situation for one of the demo accounts that we went through, and we completed each of the end of section assessments, which are effectively diagnostic affairs. So they basically target all of the objectives that the exam board sets that students should be familiar with and be able to execute those skills within different areas. And so what they have within this, and we'll spend a bit of time on this later on, is if you look at the top there, you've got information regarding the overall outcome of those assessments, how much time this was spent on it. And it gives a good high-level view of where your strengths and weaknesses are between the different sections. And then what we do is we will line up all of the assessments for the students to look at. So they got a control panel for maths with all of their weaknesses quite clearly highlighted there. And you can see there's a pop-up at the top there. It's going to show an explanation through this page. And it's also going to give access to what their answer was previously. And we've got 180 of those pop-ups would be available through this. And that's the big deal with this, is that it's very quick for students to move between questions, hunting down their weaknesses and doing something about it. Because formative assessment is just not about teachers helping students. There is this element of it that's about helping students to help themselves fix gaps in their learning. Now, all of this does tend to change things a lot for young people, because rather than, I think, a lot of them will think that it's all about just creating marks for teachers' books so that they can produce a report at the end of term or at the end of year. And there are no specific benefits in that really for the students. However, once you start putting out grade books like this, where it is definitely for their benefit, things start to change. And this is showing you the 10 most active students on our platform in the month to the 19th of February this year. And it's quite incredible how, and we're talking about 14, 15-year-olds here who have been achieving incredible levels of activity. And you can see there, you know, there's a lot of students there who did more than 50 assessments in a month. And that's what can be achieved if you get all elements of this particular intervention right. And this was, I'll just share a few comments here. This was in the early days when exams were still happening. So this would have been back in 2019. Woodbridge High School, big school in North London. And this was a comment that I just received from the head of science there, who was obviously quite excited. In the UK, they've got a system called ALPS. If you're ALPS 1, you're in the top 5% of schools. ALPS 2 is the top 10%, and it goes all the way down to ALPS 10. So ALPS 2 is a good outcome, and you can see some of the absolute outcomes within that. Sorry, ALPS 2 would mean they're in the top 10% of schools in the country. 75% achieve grade 9 to 7 in chemistry, 83% in physics, and again, 83% in biology. And a lot of the youngsters were very, very active users of the service in their own right on an independent basis. So it's not just about the teacher, it's about how you can enable the young people to actually work harder and chase their dreams, which I think is much more of an issue now, certainly, than it was back in 2019. This was one of the first schools to use us, and it was a very limited intervention. This went on for about 4 months after Christmas, all the way through to exams. And I think, you know, without getting too bogged down in this, we just measured the activity of the students on the system, and the school provided us with details of their target grades and their actual grades so that we can see to what extent students improved if they had used the system quite intensively. And you can see the differentials in the column on the far side of this particular image, and that overall, on average, for all of their science students, there are 195 of them examined that year, they effectively got almost a grade better each if they had worked hard on the system. And that's simply comparing the performance of those who didn't use the system to those who did use the system quite intensively. Now, what I want to sort of move on to here is that part of this is about getting young people to work, getting them to work harder. There's a lot of things that schools can do by setting work for them. But what you're going to find should happen is that once young people get into a routine, they will start to do it off their own bat. They will decide, right, I'm going to do some more work. And they'll start working independently. And that is what we would really, really hope to see happening within your schools if you use our system. Because once that's happening, we're monitoring all the learning that they're doing. But the key thing is that the data feedback that is going to come back is not just going to help you as a teacher, but it's also going to help the students to improve their learning as well. If you get those two things right, young people are going to do really well, a lot better than they probably would have done otherwise. So just in terms of monitoring learning, I just want to look at a little example here, which came from one of our schools in the UK. It was actually lower ability group, this, but I think it shows you just how invaluable monitoring the learning can be. And the question was effectively based on this. So a race car accelerates from rest off the start line up to a velocity of 30 meters per second in 5 seconds. Calculate its rate of acceleration. So that's quite a simple iteration of that. And so all you know, to a large extent now, is right or wrong, if you monitor that. Some digital services might do that as a true or false statement. And so by changing the question slightly, you can do that, but it's debatable to what extent that is going to actually benefit the learning of that individual. Or you could do a multi-choice. What was the rate of acceleration? Give 4 options. What we tend to like to do is we will do either the first version of that, or we would do a version like this, which is where we're trying to help young people to actually learn the process that they've got to do. And so if we take the class that I looked at the time, and I think the school's initial reaction to this was that they didn't like the low marks in the grade book. But we would say the whole point of formative assessment is it doesn't matter what the grade book looks like, it's what you can learn from it as a teaching professional. And so in effect here you can see we've got some information there in terms of the outcomes, which is of use. But really what we're interested in is what's going to be available within this learning map. And again, you can see a lot of questions were incorrect in terms of that. We can dive in and you can see that there is a lot of information that is available within that. So that sort of helps, but really it's when you start clicking on the cells within that learning map, and these are all of the answers from students for one particular question. You can see, you wouldn't actually see it like this, but you could actually move through the different responses to see where the mistakes are being made. And so hopefully some of the things that would be seen as you'd see here, there's clearly a problem confusing time with one of the velocity measures, and there's not too much that is really right about that. But if you analyze that across the whole group, which is what we've done here, you can see that big problem in that most of those students didn't work out that rest was 0 meters per second. There were issues in terms of working out the change in velocity, so 9 incorrects there compared to 3, and then as well calculating and inputting the correct acceleration and completing all of the input fields was also an issue. So a lot of students didn't even complete those fields. So you got some pretty valuable information within that. And if you'd gone back to the learning map and gone through it, the assumptions that you would have, or the sort of the judgments that you would make based on the information for question 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11 was basically there were continuing issues with speed at rest. A lot of the students had weak substitution skills, which might be suggesting weak reading skills as well, and weak when challenged to change the subject of a formula, and possibly weak recall of acceleration. And that should be saying, right, we need to revisit this and we need to deal with some of these issues and keep notes of that as you move along in terms of doing that. And I think what you will find, and this is what I was talking about early on, is that once you start to see the data coming through, it will change how you start to look at things. And that rather than using material to check learning after you've done a class, what it's going to be doing is that, basic learning will have already been done before class, and you're going to use that data when you get into the lesson. So the idea of flipping is what happens is you start to set them work to do individually beforehand. When they get into class, you're doing different activities to help develop and build on those foundations. And then the students will reinforce their knowledge and expand their learning through their independent work over and beyond that. Now, this is an economics example, so I'll forgive me for not having a math science one, but we started with economics, and this school has been with us for a long time and have achieved some quite incredible things. And right from the start, this teacher was very keen on a flipped approach, and he immediately saw that we would help him to achieve that. And although there are lots of things that help the students to help themselves, one of the things Roger Bottomley would say if he was here today is that it's the impact on his classes that has made the difference. He's got more time because he's not preparing content. He's not marking low grade knowledge tests and so on and so forth. And that gives him more time in class to do different things. And if we look at this, this just plots the added value at that school. And so what we mean by that is how much did the student grades achieved actually exceed their expected grade. And you can see that there was a big increase from 2018, which was the first time one of their groups had had the support of the service for 2 years. First year it popped up to 0.6 and it was over 1 grade extra per student. And there were 22 students within that group. And lo and behold, if there's any competitive teachers out there, this makes a big difference to national rankings. And they were suddenly a top 10 school in terms of economics in the UK, having been sort of, a good school because there's, 1,600 centres doing economics A level, but making a big, big difference in terms of that. Okay, Bernard, I'm going to switch to the system demo now.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Peter, do you prefer to allow the participant to start question and answer, or do you want to continue with the system demo?
Your choice.
Okay, so educators, if you have any question and answer before Peter continue to the demo, if you have any questions about flipped classroom or any part of materials that already being shared by Peter, please feel free to ask. You can raise your hand or you can type in the chat box, and then I will forward it to Peter. Any questions from the educators? Feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions, or you can start typing in the chat box before we continue to the live demo. Okay, I will assume if everything is okay, everything is still understandable. So maybe Peter, you can please continue with the live demo. Oh, sorry. I have a question. Okay.
Right.
I have one question from Mr. Joshua. Maybe you can help with his questions. How can we minimize the cheating of students during the exam?
So
do you have any experience? How can you minimize the cheating of students during the exam?
I'm not quite understanding that question, Bernard.
Yeah, it is written in the chat box. So basically, Mr. Joshua is asking how can we minimize the cheating of the students? I am assuming that during this online session, basically we cannot actually monitor the student directly because they have access to everything in the internet. So do you have any experience on how to minimize these kind of things, Peter?
Yeah, I think in terms of how you would run a flipped classroom, in terms of that, I would say that some teachers will have the confidence to do it, and they might actually just implement it anyway. But I think the way we would see this happening is that it's actually going to happen gradually, and it won't be a big events that we're changing today to do this. And so really, I would say that you wouldn't even need to say that you're doing it, and a lot of schools and teachers wouldn't. But I think there will be some pretty significant benefits coming through in terms of that. And the issue in terms of teaching is not teaching, the teaching is not teaching. That is why this doesn't mean that classes aren't happening. It just means that the different things are happening in the classes. So for example, if you've had a group who have done some preparatory work, for example, on a science practical, and we'll look at some of those in a minute, you are going to have a far better lab session with young people if they have some familiarity with what's going to happen in the lab. It's going to be a far better session to start a lesson with students who have half an idea rather than students who have no idea. And really, yeah, so I would say that is sort of quite an important dimension of all of this. It's not replacing the teacher at all. It's just changing and enhancing what the teachers can do. And I think in terms of cheating, what we do within all of this is that, you know, there's as much cheating as will go on with normal homework on paper, I guess. But what we do is you've got a basis for, and we'll see from some of the learning maps, of seeing and being able to compare the responses of individual students. And probably one thing that you might, depends on how you view things, you might view as cheating is students who have multiple attempts at the questions, but we record all of the attempts that they do. So a smart student might think, right, I'm just going to do an assessment really, really fast and just make a note of the answers and then come back and input them. Well, you as a teacher, you will see that. And then it's a pretty simple process to actually start managing that with the students because there's clear evidence of it.
Okay, yeah, I do agree, Peter.
Yeah.
So basically, yeah, we cannot easily avoid cheating because it is available. It can happen during online and offline.
Yeah.
So I hope it answered the question. But I have another further question.
Or even in class.
Yes,
Looking
exactly.
over your classmate's shoulder.
Maybe I would. Yeah, correctly.
I was just going to say, in terms of Heriska, absolutely, that is what we are talking about here.
We also have another good question, Peter. Maybe I would like to invite the educators to ask the question directly. I think this is from Miss Mustaful Aulia Imzanis. Miss Aulia, if you don't mind, if you can unmute your microphone, you can ask directly to Mr. Peter. Mr. Ludi, can you help me find Miss Aulia? Miss Taful?
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. Actually, I would like to ask this question. During the flipped learning, actually, this is the common problem that I usually face. It is that some of the students, they are rarely do the task that I give before or after the learning process. So is there any solution for those students? Thank you.
Yeah, I would say in terms of that, there is a lot of, it's probably going to come down to, you know, how do you get a young person to sort of do some work at home? Well, I think, you know, some engagement with the parents will help. And we've got quite a bit of reporting that you can use to actually achieve that. And you can even encourage the parents to, you know, use the login of the students so they can see what's happening. And I think, you know, one of the things that what you will find with students like that is that there'll be lots of excuses, lots of reasons why they can't do things. But I think our mantra is almost like at Easy Education, the truth is never more than 3 clicks away. And it is very, very easy to see what's been done. And that does help to manage away the excuses and the fibs that can go on in terms of why work isn't being done. But I would say more than anything, if the parents are on side with you, the main thing I would say is to encourage the parents to sit down with their students. I mean, you'll see in a minute, there is any competent adult can help their children do this. You know, they just have to sit down, go through the process and make sure they start completing the activities. And you can get quite a bit of improvement from that, because typically, I would say, my experience has always been the students who are difficult and awkward do so because they don't particularly like the subject. And the reason they don't like the subject is probably because they haven't been that successful at it. And if you can help them to be more successful, then you've got half a chance of turning that around and getting more work from them. But I think, you know, ultimately, it has to be accepted that you will never resolve that with some students. You know, there's not much we can do about that. Is that sort of any follow-up from that at all, or?
Okay, so I hope that answered the questions. There is someone raising their hand, but they just take down their raised hand. But Peter, there is a follow-up question from Mr. Joe Marquinhos. The question is about cheating issue. How to minimize it using the easy education? Is there any specific feature in there that can help minimize the cheating?
With the cheating?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, basically, we record everything. And what you'll need to do is to look at patterns in the behavior of students, and it will become very, very clear. I mean, it's probably easier if I show you within the demo when we get going in a minute. But yeah, absolutely. I think if it's going on, it should be quite clear what is happening. And it's the age-old problem that you know, some students will just look for ways to sort of cheat through it. And I think, but the thing is, if the role of the teacher, I guess, is to moderate that. So to make sure it's understood, you know, to make it clear that the teacher understands what's going on, and to factor that into assessments that are made of that student.
Okay, Peter, maybe before we continue with the live demo, I think I also find another interesting question from Zacharias Simpas.
Yeah.
Please feel free to unmute and you can ask the questions, because I think this is quite relevant questions. Zacharias Simpas, can you unmute yourself?
Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, Zacharias.
My question is with regards to relying on the past paper questions in reviewing the students for better exam. In the past few years, I'm not relying heavily, but I'm using a lot of past papers for the review so that they will understand how the questions are going to be given, how to answer the questions, how to face themselves for the timing of the exam. Now, my question is it still reliable or is it still advisable to rely heavily on past paper questions in reviewing the students?
I would definitely use past papers, absolutely. And I think you can be quite creative with them, because certainly in terms of the multi-choice paper on science, sorry, was your question in terms of science or maths, Zacharias?
My question is in science because I'm teaching biology.
Yeah. So if you think about the multi-choice paper that is within the CIE setup, it's making sure that there is learning that comes out of that. So I would say that is very, very useful for getting students into the practice of exams and what to expect within it and to work under that time pressure. And but I think, you know, it's to do a bit more than just mark it and give the correct answers. I was a great believer, because there's quite a bit of multi-choice in the subjects that I was teaching in school. I'm a great believer that there is a definite technique to multi-choice questions, and you can really focus on that, and it's all about how they eliminate the options when they're actually answering the papers. I mean, I had one youngster who was very clever, but he had various visual issues going on, and he could not keep his focus on the question for long enough to actually know what he was answering. And he then got confused when he got into looking at the options. And so I think practice is absolutely critical. And I would even say that students should have a plan for the exam. What are you going to do when you walk into that exam? How much time are you going to spend on things? How are you going to, you know, you're going to make sure that if it's an extended response, working out how many points you're going to make. It's basically knowing exactly what they're going to be doing. And certainly I would say the youngsters who completely blow it in exams are the ones who turn up and it's the first time that they've really engaged with anything that looks like an exam paper. And they start to panic and it's game over. And it's, you know, it's all about having a very structured approach to it. Yeah. Is that sort of?
Yes, I hope that answered the question, Mr. Zacharias. Sir, maybe we can continue to the live demo, and if you need any help from the participant, please do let me know. Yeah, you can start the demonstration about the program.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So, is the screen share working okay there?
Yes.
Right. So this is our homepage. So we've got a few videos on the homepage. So that's more for, that one there is more for parents who are just working independently. But we've got some videos within this which you can just go through and which will repeat a lot of this sort of stuff. But if you are looking to log in, the way through to the courses is you put in your login at the top here. And once you've done that, this is going through to a student login. And so what they will see when they come onto the course is this sort of setup. So there's two ways to interact with the material. Some students will just do what they're told to do and that's it. And they will come down and they'll be interested in the work that's been set for them. Or alternatively, which is where you would want them to really end up, is that they start to work independently. And so they can go straight into the course from here. Now, I'm going to show you just some bits and pieces from some of the other courses where we've got more data. So it's going to be the same infrastructure for the Cambridge courses, but we haven't got much data in those at the moment. But if we go in and we go to the maths, let's just say you're wanting to do some maths. And what they end up with here is while in the learning zone, so we're here now, we've logged in, you can see this is the important menu once you're within this for moving around things. And this here is the Learning Zone homepage. And you get to that via that tab or that tab. And if you're going into the course directly, you would come in this way and you just keep opening things up. There's lots of information, activities within these, but the key thing for young people is that if they've done some work on a particular subject, it's quite clear what they've done and what they haven't done. And they can go back in to have a look at these things. So for example, if they wanted to have another go at that assessment or another go at that video, you can just go in via that. If it's something that you haven't done, so let's have a look at this. Oh yeah, we've done a bit there. So you can see it's through this sort of setup. So if you hadn't done some work, you can just come in here and you just click on that and it takes you straight through to the particular assessment, sorry, particular video in that particular instance. So there's quite a bit they can do independently there. And but the key thing is, let's have a look at some actual assessments. Have we got any volunteers out there to answer a few questions?
Yes, sure. So educators, if you would like to help Mr. Peter, please, you can raise your hand. Yeah, participants, feel free to raise your hand if you would like to try.
Nothing arduous, it's just going to be
Yeah, I think some of the participants are still quite shy. Any participant would like to help Mr. Peter?
Okay.
Hello and welcome to the
Okay, I'll just play a video. I'll just walk it through. It's fine. We don't. It's not essential. So
Okay.
So if the work has not been covered in class, or the students are looking to back up what happens in class, and a lot of students do that because they haven't got it first time round. There wasn't enough time. They didn't take good notes. And so here we go.
Easy Maths lecture presentation on types of number. Now, a number is an arithmetical value that is expressed by a word or symbol that represents a specific quantity. Now, we're going to be looking at three specific types of numbers today. We're going to be looking at odd and even numbers, we're going to be looking at positive and negative numbers, and we're going to take a look at integers and non-integers. So, first things first, let's have a look at numbers. Now, all numbers are made up of the following digits. Now, each of these digits represents a specific value. So what we're going to do is we're going to put these digits in order of size. Obviously starting with 0, which represents nothing, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 9. Now, every single value or number that we use will be made up of these 10 digits. So what we can do is we can start to categorize these digits into even numbers and odd numbers. So all even numbers will end in a 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8.
So that's pretty much the style. So you can see we've got about 4 minutes or so within that one. And so students will either spend some time on that or not. And then they will go into the next activity, which is going to be an assessment. And you can see here the approach is very much, so we're trying to support the students here. And so when we do this a lot, we try to get them to interact with these things. You hit the submit button, and what it's going to do is it's going to mark it for them. It's going to show them what the correct answer is, but it's got these feedback videos.
So for this question, we've been asked to identify which of the following is an integer. And we've got our four options here. We've got our answers 0.5, 0.01, C, which is 1, and D, which is 3/4 over there. Now, the first thing we need to establish is this key word over there, which is that word integer. So what does integer actually mean? Well, an integer is basically a whole number. So anything that is a whole number can be classified as an integer. So therefore, looking at our 4 options here, you can see that this one is not a whole number, B is not a whole number, and D is not a whole number. They're all part numbers, and they're probably known as non-integers. So these 3 options.
So that's pretty much the approach with that. Obviously, that's of more value when you get to more sophisticated questions. And so some of the things the youngsters will do is, if they get to this question, they think, oh, I'm not too sure about that. I'll go back and I can have a look at the feedback video. There are lots of things that they can do. And if we move on a bit to look at some of these questions, I think what I'll do is we haven't got the extra support available on these, but you can see what we're doing here is, although we've got true or false, there's quite a few statements that go on, and they need to get all of those correct to get a mark, which changes the dynamic of the question quite enormously. So you are not talking about 50-50 for each true or false. You've got much longer odds if you don't concentrate on it. And then again, we sort of go through it, so you can see it's the same sort of approach in terms of that. Now, if we come back, and what I am going to do is I'm going to go back to the Learning Zone homepage here, and you can see that we've got some work here that was set, and so you can see here this was set for me. I had a go at it, and I can go back into that to resume it. I'm going to start on a different one here. So I can click on that, and I've gone into direct proportion. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through to this. And so this might be a useful time. So let's just say I progress through to this question. If any of you have downloaded the app onto your phone, you can actually run an augmented reality experience from the screen here. So in effect, all you need to do is to open the Zappar app. If you point it at the code once the app is open, that is going to, it'll make a peep, which will tell you it's unlocking the experience. And when that happens, just move your phone back so that you're capturing the image that is there at the bottom within the field of view, and you should see the augmented reality experience start up, which will give you.
Okay, maybe Peter, maybe we can give some time for the participants to
sure,
try
absolutely.
this.
Yep.
Okay, so educators, at the beginning we mentioned you can download the Zappar app. It is available in App Store and Play Store. It is available for free. Once you download the application, you can use the application to scan the code in your screen right now. There is a lightning icon over there. Basically, you can scan that using your Zappar application. And if it works, it should show you some video, right, Peter?
Correct, yes. So
if you manage to do it, please do let us know.
Pretty much. So if we come back to if we just go into the.
Yeah, I also have some feedback from Miss Ariska saying that she already managed to do it and she sees the video.
All right, okay. There you go. So some of the this is a sort of demo video, which is what we use for the UK students. So I'll just play that. This is an example of one of our snapshot booklets. This is for maths. This is higher tier students, so it contains all of the information that's needed. We've got cut down versions for foundation level. The idea behind this is you open this up and you can see immediately that it covers all of the areas that you're going to be familiar with, and within each of those sections you can see we have neatly chunked it up into the topics that you'll be familiar with. So in terms of algebra, you've got formulae, laws of indices, factorizing, quadratics, inequalities, it's all there. And the idea behind this is that this intends to, we'll move on a bit and we'll go and have a look. Here we go, let's go into completing the square and solving quadratics, everybody's favorite. And so the idea behind this is providing a summary of the processes that you need to go through. And if you feel that you need a visual backup on this, then that is quite easily achieved by going to the App Store, downloading the Zappar app. And you can also go to the Google Play Store, and so you pull back and you can see here that immediately we've opened up an augmented reality experience. And so there are various options here. So for example, you can go for...
Okay, so bear with me as we go through this particular topic. So we're looking to complete the square and then
So
use that
that is pretty much how that works. If there are any questions at all, Bernard, or...
Yeah, I think some of the participants might still trying to access the Zappar. Maybe you can show again the code, Peter, so they can try it on their own.
Yeah, so here we go. Let's look at simultaneous equations.
Okay, so educators, if you like to try, I think you need to move and scan quite closer to the screen.
Yeah, you need to put the phone very close to the screen,
Or can you zoom in, Peter, on this page?
Sorry?
Can you zoom in?
Yeah, I can zoom in. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you can scan the Zappar on the left. There is a Zap code, and it should provide you with a video. Okay, I am starting to have response that it is starting to work. I think it is working, Peter.
Okay, that's cool. So it creates a little bit extra in terms of activities that are set for students. So within the maths course, we've actually got these prompts available. The booklets are available as well, but we haven't really sorted out how we're going to approach the booklets in Indonesia yet, but you've actually got access to this within the courses. So what I'm going to do now is if we come back to the assignment hub, so you can see here, this is showing me exactly what I've done and what I haven't done. In terms of that module there, you can see they've got an analytics icon here that they can go straight through to their grade book to see the work that they've done on that particular assignment. And this is what I was talking about earlier on, is that they, you could take the view, right, I want to have a look at that question.
So here we've got another ordering question where we've been asked to order these numbers from smallest to largest. Now what we've got chucked in here are some negative values as well. So you've got -21, -4, 16, 8, 0, -7,
and you can move around.
3. So what we could do, we could use place value to sort this out.
You can move around really, really fast in terms of this. So look at the marked answer. Let's go and have a look at question 5. You can really sort of work through it and take a look at where you went wrong on the question and then look at an explanation. So they can go and do that. However, what I was going to show here was we do a bit of science here. And so I set this piece of work, which was about doing the experiments within this. So this is osmosis. And we actually record the experiments and we have some sort of commentary on live clips and so on. So I just play some of this.
Hello and welcome to this, the first of two the sugar solution while osmosis takes place. So let's move on now to observe Catherine setting up the experiment. Her first task is to produce pieces of potato as far as possible identical in size and shape. And to do that, she's using a cork borer, and this produces cylinders of potato. So altogether, Catherine needs 5 cylinders of potato. She has 4 now, and just producing the 5th. The next step is to cut these cylinders of potato to the same size, and Catherine's going to cut them to each be 4 centimeters in length. The next task is to measure the mass of each of these cylinders. We know the lengths, now she needs to know the masses. So the first one has a mass of 0.88 grams, and we're going to record that in a table, just as Catherine has done. And notice she's put that now into a boiling tube that's going to carry the 0 concentration sugar solution. Catherine's going to leave this for at least an hour before she remeasures the lengths of these pieces of potato and measures their masses again.
So you can see
before
it
we
sort of goes through it from start to finish. It's about 10 minutes on that, which is quite a useful exercise. And I think for the first time, students don't have to be in the lab to engage with a practical. And it provides the perfect reflection tool in terms of that. And we've got another one here, which is on analysing the results. I won't specifically look at that, but if we go through here to the assessments, you can see that we do quite a few different things within these. So they need to play the video for this question.
For this question, you first need to watch a short video in which Catherine starts an experiment. In this experiment, Catherine is investigating the effect of changing the concentration of a sugar solution on osmosis in a number of tissue samples from a parsnip. So Catherine's going to start by removing 5 cylindrical tissue samples from a parsnip using a cork borer.
So it sort of just goes through that. So it's just a bit of a clip from before. And so they've just got to go through, and so I'm just, here we go. And what it's going to do is it is going to mark it for them. It's going to show them what the correct answer should have been. And then we've got some feedback again.
For this question, you first need to watch a short video in which Catherine starts an experiment. In this experiment, Catherine is investigating the effect of changing the concentration of a sugar solution on osmosis in a number of tissue samples from a parsnip. So Catherine's going to start by removing 5 cylindrical tissue samples from a parsnip using a cork borer.
So it's pretty much goes through like that. And what we do is, so after, sorry, I didn't show you the feedback video, sorry.
Before answering this question, you were asked to watch a short video clip of Catherine starting an experiment. You were then asked to complete this table identifying all the variables in the experiment. So let's start off with the first variable, sugar concentration. Now we can see from the question that Catherine is investigating.
So it's quite clear in terms of it. And
okay, so Peter, are you saying that on each question available in IGCSE Education, the student will have immediate feedback from that questions, and they also will have a feedback video for each question?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we go to, let's pick a later question. So here we go. So what we do quite a bit of this sort of stuff, getting them used to doing tabulations as well. And and we mark that. So what you can see here is that it relates specifically.
Here we've been given the partially completed results table from Catherine's experiment, showing the initial and final mass of each of the cylinders of parsnip.
So we just sort of build this up as we go through. So I think if I start off at, so what do we get them to do? So first off, we've got some images here where they need to be able to, just like they're in the lab, read off the readings, input them. And then once they've done that, we, what are we on here? We're on question 4. In terms of question 5, once they've done that, we actually ask them to do some calculations. And it's quite a clear progression within it, get them to repeat that. So if they got that one wrong, they would have access to the feedback video if they wanted to. If they thought, oh, crikey, I've got to do that again, they can go back and correct themselves. And what else have we got here? Again, and then finish off with 2 of them. And we then get into this in terms of how can they engage with graphs in terms of which of these are correct. And you go straight through. Let's have a look at question 9. Again, can they read from an image of a graph? And finally, what have we got here? We've got something which is getting them to think a bit more deeply about what's going on, and can they explain the differences in the results of the 2 groups? So can they analyze data and make some judgments based on that? So it's we're not trying to shoot the lights out with mega difficult questions. We are just trying to go through what the exam board expectation is in terms of this particular practical for this age group. And
Okay,
if
so
there is a desire to do more challenging stuff, then we would say that, you know, that's definitely something that is one of the class activities in terms of this.
Okay, Peter, I have a good question from Ms. Ariska Swandana. I think this is still related with the questions. So are the type of questions in IGCSE and practice in AZ are exactly the same? And is it possible for the student to monitor their own progress, or it has to be monitored by the teachers?
No, they can monitor their own progress. So, so if I'm on a student login at the moment. If I thought, right, I want to have a look at how I'm doing, I would come straight to my grade book. And what I am going to do here is, let's have a look at some physics. Okay, so I'd go into this. So this is my grade book. And what this is showing me is the work that I have been doing on my account. I then have this, which is basically showing me my line from my teacher's grade book. So you can see how much work there is in this potentially. There is quite a lot. And what I would start doing is if I want to review my progress, so let's just say we had done fine with, this was preparatory work for a lab session, finding the specific capacity. I might come back to this and think, okay, this was one of the questions, had a little bit of an issue there, might get myself clear on the mistake I made there, maybe play that video. And what else could we find? This question here, question 10, 126 v 478. So knowing that the right answer is 478 doesn't really help me unless I get exactly that same data. Again, what I might do there is just play the video.
This question is about an experiment carried out by a student to find the specific heat capacity of glass. And we know that because the glass has been placed in boiling water initially and left there for long enough for us to be certain that it's reached the same temperature as the surrounding boiling water. That's 100 degrees centigrade. The glass is then placed into the cold water in the beaker, and as the glass loses thermal energy, its temperature drops, while at the same time the water gains thermal energy and its temperature rises. When they reach the same temperature, then they stop exchanging.
So it's for the students, they can do quite a lot on their own. If we go here, let's have a look at, so let's just say they can filter here. So we've just filtered it to look at this, which was energy, which allows them to focus in on that particular subject. And some of the things that are quite useful here is, which a lot of the youngsters will like. I just clicked for a personal report there. And what you can see is if I open that up, you can see I've got a nice little report of the work that I've done in that area. Excuse me. And which I can use, and teachers can generate these as well. So if you wanted to share with parents, so it might be quite nice in this one. They've been, you know, the students been pretty busy, 4 hours of work on the system. There's quite a bit that can be done to develop that. And what I'm going to do now is, I mean, that's pretty much it from the student point of view. We have, if we come back here, so what students at your schools would see would be these two courses just showing, and any work that has been set by the teacher. Now, if I come out of this now, I'm going to go in on a teacher login. Okay, so this is, it looks sort of is slightly different for the teacher. This is all the same. They will have some different options here, so you can go into school management. You will see the work that's been set for students here, and either via the assignment hub here or via this to access all-time assignments. This will do that. It takes you through to be able to look at the work that has been set. So for example, let's say investigating osmosis. If we go into that, we can see that there's been a little bit of interaction with that. And what the teacher can do from there is they can go through to the learning maps so they can see immediately what has happened. Now, there isn't going to be much data on this, so I am going to go physics full course. So what we are going to do, we're going to look at energy, which was the section we had been looking at. This is how you would see the student grade book. And if you wanted to go, so what this is showing you, let me just make this a little bit bigger. So what this is showing you here is you can see how much time was spent on the lecture video, how much time in the assessment, what outcome they achieved. Now that's their best outcome. In terms of cheating, as soon as you see that, you might think, okay, that's telling me they've had 2 goes at this. And you can see there the date and time that they've spent on those and the scores. So it's quite easy to judge their behavior. But more importantly, if we were to be wanting to look at this one here, we go through to this. This is the learning map you would see. And so immediately, there's not a huge amount here, but if we click on this, this is what the teacher gets to see in terms of that question. And what a teacher might like to do is to review that. So if when you're on this, if you move the cursor onto the image and you do a right click, open image in new tab, then what you've got is you've got the question isolated up on the screen so that you can go through and review that as a teacher. Equally, if you don't fancy reviewing that, then it's quite easy to basically.
To answer this question, you first had to watch 2 video clips of Catherine correctly carrying out an experiment to determine the specific heat capacity temperature as 18 degrees centigrade.
So some of the things here are, so on that one, if you'd wanted to look at that in a bit more detail, you can see here you've got the analysis of the inputs in terms of how many got each input right, and very, very quick to move around this. And you can rank it according to time spent. And so you can see there, these guys have spent no time. It very successfully isolates those who haven't done the work yet in terms of managing that. Now, some of our more experienced users of this would say that young people, especially in the UK, I don't know what it's probably not that much different in Indonesia, don't like to be judged. And there is a process you need to go through with this at the start, where putting learning maps onto the screen can cause a bit of a commotion to start with. But once they get used to it, they then know that the teacher knows what they're doing and they just get on with the work. It makes a big difference. And as well, that their classmates can see that there's no work happening. So I'd say that's quite an important part of this. And so as a teacher, it's very easy for me to say that it's as easy as this, but because I've been using this for a long time. But let's just say I had a maths lesson. I wanted to get them to do some maths homework. I would come straight into the course. We go to trigonometry. Let's say we're going to look at, we're going to do Pythagoras. And so all I would do then is I'd think, oh, right, okay. Before I set the work, I am going to preview that particular assessment, and that's going to show me all the questions that I'm going to be asking them to do. So you can quickly catch up on that. And then what I would do is you hit on the set button. So one click, 2 clicks, and I'm going to set a date. Let's give them a week to do that. Set the assignment. What's happening now is an email is being sent to all of the students telling them that this work has been set. And if we go to the assignment hub, I can see that Pythagoras has been set there. And so even if you were doing it in class, if the students have got access to devices or you were doing a live lesson, all you would do then is you just click on that. And this is going to ask, because I've got no, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back. Let's just say we were doing this one here. So I would go through to this, and all I would do is, let's just say I'd set them that assessment. I would click on it and I would sit back and watch them while they worked. And all I would do is update and refresh the page periodically so I can see what's going on. So immediately, this is already had some data in it, so it's not the greatest. But let's just say we'd got to this point, I'd be really focusing on these students.
Okay, Peter. Yeah, thank you. That is very interesting. But we have to continue to the Q&A. So,
okay, that's cool.
Educators, if you have any questions, I might still have for 1 or 2 questions. Or if you are interested, you can raise your hand and you can ask directly to Mr. Peter. Any questions? Feel free to raise your hand. Or again, you can type it in the chat box if you have any specific questions for the LC education program. Okay. Question for Mr. Dwi Joko Kristanto. Yeah, Mr. Dwi, can you unmute yourself?
Good evening, Mr. Peter.
Hi there.
I just want to ask, is there a certain capacity, for example, like how many gigabyte for those if we use the easy educations? Is there a maximum capacity, for example, after a few assignment that we have to delete or something, or we just
no, we don't. There's no capacity limits on that at all. So we've got, some of the schools have got huge amounts of data on the system. What they tend to do is when students finish the course and pass through, they will just archive the students. And yeah, it's I know lots of services will charge you for storage, but it really, storage costs peanuts these days. So it is, there's no limits in terms of it. If there is something that is very, I don't know, the videos are probably more costly because of the bandwidth that they use up and so on. But even then, it's not really costly for us. So it's, you know, use it as much as you like, really. And you know, we got some young people who've got, oh, you know, they've done 3,000-4,000 questions on the system. It can really build up with the right young person. You know, we got some who've done nothing, and their teachers are, you know, forever. It's just the battle that they've got with them. But generally speaking, if you've got a young person who wants to learn this and they're prepared to do some work, this should engage them, and you should be able to use it to effectively do that.
Okay, I hope it answered the question, Mr. Dwi. Okay, any other questions from the educators? Okay, if there is no further questions, do not worry. Well, since it is almost time, I have to end the Q&A sessions. But do not worry, if you still have any questions, you can deliver your questions to the email and WhatsApp number on the screen. And thank you, Mr. Peter, for the session. As has been added by Mr. Peter, teachers need resilient teaching delivery with more effective automation. You can now use AZ Education portal to help you flip your classroom and to have a better result in IGCSE exam. I believe AZ Education provides around 230 lecture video, around 370 assessment, and 4,000 questions with feedback video for each subject. And educators, let me share you a link. Yes, I already shared a link in the chat box. Basically, I will explain in bahasa Indonesia. Bapak, Ibu, kita bisa mendapatkan akses Easy Education dengan mengisi School Inquiry Form yang tersedia di link. Ada di chat box. Okay, educators, so if you are interested, feel free to click the link that I already typed in the chat box. By completing the link, then Peter will help you with a trial account for your school. Dan Bapak Ibu, ada program informasi yang saya perlu informasikan juga. Setelah mendapatkan free trial, bagi Bapak Ibu yang tertarik untuk mendapatkan akses bagi sekolah, Mentari Group memberikan support dengan special price seharga 150.000 per tahun per siswa. Jadi Bapak Ibu mendapatkan 4 subjek, yaitu IGCSE Math, Fisik, Chemistry, dan Biologi. Jadi ini harganya 150.000 sudah untuk 4 subjek tersebut. Jadi bukan per subjek, harga tersebut sudah untuk 4 subjek. Dan sebagai support tambahan dari Mentari Group, biasanya akun untuk guru akan kami support free. Nah, mungkin sebelum ke situ, Bapak Ibu bisa mencoba terlebih dahulu dengan mengklik link yang ada di chat box. Yeah. Trial account ini, ya baik, ada pertanyaan dari Mr. Leo. So basically the trial account will last for the entire month, so feel free to navigate for the next following month. Ya, sekali lagi Bapak Ibu, nanti setelah Bapak Ibu mencoba trialnya, dan jika Bapak Ibu tertarik, sekedar saya updatekan sekali lagi, jika Bapak Ibu berkenan untuk melanjutkan programnya, ini programnya sangat terjangkau, 150.000 untuk 4 subjek, mathematics, physics, chemistry, and biology. So very affordable price for the entire year. And of course, educators feel free to contact our education consultant if you need more information. And you can also still send information to the email and WhatsApp number on the screen. Okay, so educators, before we move on, we would like to thank you, Mr. Peter Jordan, for such a great and informative session. I'm sure that our teacher will get some insights and have our mind refreshed. Now, educators, let's have a photo session together. So please turn on the camera or video so we can show our happy faces and give our best pose. My colleague, Mr. Ludi, will help me lead the photo session. Mr. Ludi, please kindly help us with the photo session.
Okay, everyone, please turn on your camera. I will take a picture, yeah. Because there are a lot of participants, I will take around 5 or 6 times. Okay, Mr. Bernard, please share a screen. I will take the picture.
Share the
Okay.
slides. Okay, let me open the PowerPoint again. Okay, I will share the screen.
Okay, everyone. Please smile. Okay. Smile. 1, 2. Okay. Just wait. Next, 1, 2. Okay. Next, 1, 2. Fourth page. 1, 2. And the last one. Okay, 1, 2. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Ludi, for the photo sessions. The photo will be sent to the WhatsApp group. And now, educators, please kindly spend 2 minutes to fill in our online feedback form. The link and the QR code are displayed on the screen. If you are having difficulty with the feedback form, you can click the link on the chat box. Yeah, educators, this is important. Please access the online form and make sure to fill it carefully on your full name and active email address. Okay, so please make sure you fill in the feedback form and fill in your full name and active email address. The e-certificate will be sent to your email only after you submit the feedback. Okay, educators. Thank you very much for your feedback. It will be a good contribution for us in improving our quality and to serve you better in the future. Educators, before we end today's session, I would like to share some updates from Mentari Group. Yeah, Mentari Bookstore Super Sale is now available in Tokopedia and Shopee to exclusively sell import books from world-class publishers such as Marshall Cavendish, Oxford University Press, Hodder Education, and Cambridge University Press at a very special price, up to 90% discount. So ladies and gentlemen, you may grab your phone and check our Tokopedia and Shopee account then. Let's start book shopping. And then we have Hadirio. I'm sure most of you already know about this platform. We provide Hadirio for everyone to register for Mentari Group events, both face-to-face and live streaming. Also through Hadirio, you can create your own event. Kindly visit www.hadirio.id regularly to check your event updates, or if you want to have a partnership, please contact our team. Last but not least, we also have Mau Pintar. It is an online learning platform that provides a lot of learning video that can be accessed by students or even educators to have inspiration for teaching ideas. One of the current events in Mentari to serve online